You're ready to go. First of all, it's wonderful to be here, and I'm so glad to see so many different faces of different forms and shapes and backgrounds and ages, which is great, because the subject that we're going to be exploring, it is very, very exciting. It is really exciting to me as a psychotherapist who explores the integration of the Baha'i writings into the process of therapy and psychotherapy, and how we can really break frontiers of the whole field of psychotherapy by paying attention and noticing the informations that we have from the Baha'i writings. As all of you might know, psychology, psychotherapy, psychology is very much in its infancy, has been. And what I see in my 20 years of practice, I see a convergence of the whole field towards the appreciation of what the Baha'i writings has to tell us. But it's a long ways before we really have full appreciation. I can tell you it wasn't a very long time ago that someone came with the idea that maybe we should also look at happiness as a focus of psychology, which is very strange because we know that Abdul-Baha wrote The Secret of Divine Civilization, and in that book, small little book, he mentioned 38 times happiness. And just a few years ago was when psychologists said, oh yeah, you know what, we shouldn't be looking only at pathology, maybe we should look at something like happiness. And now they're looking, the other day I saw somebody thinking, oh, we should look at courage. Goodness. And then somebody, I saw another researcher came out just brand new. Now we are going to be looking at awe, a sense of awe, which is all of these are in the writings. And if you're familiar with the writings, these feelings should be part of the repertoire of how we experience life. We should be experiencing awe, of course, happiness, courage, and a lot of other things. So this session is about this exploration that I like to bring to your focus. We're going to have a short time, but I think we can make the point. So, what we're going to do is, to begin with, I would like to draw for you a device that looks like that, but it's not going to be as good as that, but it's kind of a functional. So this has been a device that I've been using for many years. Those of you who are familiar with my workshops, you know that I use this five-pointed star, which is the symbol of the Baha'i faith. And it has 5 zones, and these 5 zones, according to the field of cognitive behavioral therapy, are the 5 zones of our awareness of our own self. But these 5 zones also apply to the Baha'i writings because it has all the components that we see in the Baha'i writings in order to know ourselves. Let's remember that the whole notion, the whole point of psychology is to know our own self, to know our psyche. That's really the whole thing. So here we have, as you see up there, we have sense perception. That means, what do we see with our senses? How many senses do we have? 5. Very good, you got to know that. So I'm standing here, I'm seeing you, I'm hearing you. I can kind of, not really, but I can smell these jasmines from my garden and the roses. I cannot taste you. And definitely, so what is the other one? Touch. Okay, touch, I can touch. So those are the senses. That's what Abdul-Baha calls our physical powers. That's how the world comes at us. That's how we detect the world. Now, so that's what we can call it what happens. Then, on the flip side of that, we have a spiritual power, which is called imagination. And the reason I call it spiritual power, because Abdul-Baha calls it spiritual power. So we have spiritual powers, like thought, like imagination, like comprehension, feelings. These are our spiritual powers. So now I have to give you a question, because I wanted this to interaction, so you guys are alert, because it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's easy to kind of doze off, right? So we don't want to do that. So here it is. Let's say, for example, here we have a feeling, okay? And the way it works is like, somebody, let's say, across the room, and there are lots of young men and women here in this crowd, in this conference. I know they look at each other from a distance, and they might see somebody smiling, and I'm sure they have a certain kind of feelings about that smile. So what would be the feeling that you feel when you see somebody smiling across the room? Give me one feeling.
Positive.
Positive, happy, very good. Very good. So if you're looking at a smile and you're feeling happy, this is intention. So what do you want to do about that smile? Smile back. Very good. So that will be your action. So here we have somebody smiles, we feel good, we want to basically smile back, and our action is smile back. Now, is it possible that there is another person sitting in the same room looking at the same smile, and they see that smile and they have EBGBs? Is it possible? So they feel uncomfortable. So what is it? The same smile. What is it that in one person creates a sense of pleasant kind of a idea of feeling, and the other one is uncomfortable? What's the difference?
Our history.
Personality. Perception.
Our history, our personality, our perception.
Sincerity.
Okay, sincerity. Basically, it is our thought. The way we choose to think about something, or anything, or whatever it is that comes to us, this is where we choose to understand the life and the world around us. Yeah, it could be based on our experience, it could be based on our upbringing, it could be based on our values.
My necklace and my mic fell off.
Do this again. I didn't do a good job. Okay. Is it good? Okay. So our thought is what makes really gives the world meaning. And according to Abdul Baha, our reality, man's reality, is his thought. Now, if we can learn maturity, a mature person is a person who is able to have such number of alternative thoughts about one subject that they can navigate themselves with all kinds of ways and be able to have a number of ways of looking at one thing. And as a result, a whole range of feelings towards something. So when we say that I don't feel good about this thing, or I feel good about this thing, or I like this thing, or I don't like this thing, it really is not a set in stone. It's about the way we have been thinking about it. We have been raised that way, we have been taught that way, we have, because of our experience. For example, someone who has had a bad experience with an accident, or with a snake, or whatever it is, the minute they see the snake, they're going to feel what?
Scared.
They're scared, and then they might want to run away, or we have fight, flight, or freeze. That means either we run away, or we hit the snake on the head, or we will freeze. These are automatic reactions. But if the person has been a person who has been playing and working and training with snakes, if they see a snake, what do? They go with their stick and they will hold it and they will catch it and they will demonstrate it and they will show it to everybody, and they're actually delighted that they found a snake. Right? So those of you who know, I don't know if you know, but if you read Maxwell's of Montreal, you see that Ruya Khanum asked, when she was a teenager, she asked for a snake, pet. Exactly, so you see? So it could be all kinds of ways of looking at the same thing. Okay, in this respect, one thing which is very important to realize is that our thoughts, basically, are really in reality in the form of shapes. I'll give you an example. So if I tell you, don't think about a snake, what comes to your mind? Because your brain really does not register don't. So if you want to train your, educate your children, you do not say don't think about sex. Because what's going to happen is they're going to think about sex. So you don't say don't think about hitting somebody, because what they're going to think about is they're hitting somebody. So the brain doesn't register don't. So you better put it in a positive frame and say, I want you to be kind to your little sibling or brother or whatever it is. I want you to use your hand in a kind way. So they can picture a kind hand in a kind way, and that is a lot more effective. So knowing these little ways that the human brain works is very helpful. So our thoughts are in the shape of are in shapes. So therefore, one of the things that have been very powerful in the way to train our thoughts is use of metaphors. Do you guys know what is metaphor? Mm-hmm. Good, I'm glad to hear that. Because I know that there are people who come sometimes, you know, they just start for the first time looking at the Baha'i prayer and say, wow, goodness, this is such flowery language. I don't understand it at all. And that's because this is the language that they need to be educated about, okay? So, now, happiness is a translation of a chosen elevated thoughts that is translated into action. So not every thought we think we translate into action is going to bring us happiness and joy. So we got to know how to train our thoughts. So the whole process of spiritual education is about spiritualizing our thoughts, the way to think, the way manifestation of God, it teaches us to think. And that's how we become godlike, because that's our identity, okay? So far we got a little bit of this notion of this. Now remembering another thing is that we all have, according to Abdul Baha, the Baha'i Writings, and AA, those of you who are familiar, which I love this organization, the 12 steps, I recommend to all my patients to go and examine and participate in one AA session, if they can. It teaches you so much about really human appetites, addiction, freedom of it, how spirituality really helps in that respect. So I really, really love this organization. I speak for it. So we all have two selves. One is we have a Luke Skywalker in each one of us. And then, I wish I could draw one. And then we have a Darth Vader in each one of us. There is nobody who does not have these two. That means these two are absolutely not going to give up their own right to express themselves. So something happens in life and each one of them compete who's going to open the door and who's going to make the decision. And guess what? There's a story of the two wolves that Native American have. They say, which one of these two will get strong, Grandpa? Well, whichever one you feed more is going to get stronger. And then therefore that's going to take over. The ideal, this is a God self to us. This is the writings. This is the hidden word self. And the rest are our lower self, which has all kinds of vices. And gets angry, gets jealous, gets upset, and starts criticizing others and all kinds of stuff like that. This Darth Vader is really very good at that. So you got to know which one is speaking in your mind as whichever voice is coming. So the answer to you is that, do we have voices in our heads? Yes, we have two of them. So far, I think I'm going to move on with the slides. So now we have something here that I need your activity and your thinking hat. I see someone had a hat over there. Looks like he's thinking. Exactly. Okay, so there are 10 items on this picture. I want you in your mind, you have about less than a minute. I want you to pair them in 5 pairs. 5 pairs, and if you want to write it, fine. If you want to think it, fine. That's fine with me. And I'm going to ask you a question about what did you pair with what? Maybe a few questions of those of you. So you got less than a minute, pair them. 5 pairs. No talking with the person outside next to you. No talking. No consultation. I used to train teachers. Boy, goodness, the hardest people to teach are teachers. They talk in the back of the room. Anyway, so everybody just do it on your own because it's going to be you. Good. Okay, is there anybody that needs more time? No? Thank God. Good, you guys fast. Okay, so can I have some volunteers to see how did you pair these items? I need a hand. Yes.
Just one pair or all of them?
No, just give me your pairs. Oh, let's see, get a microphone for you, because we need to hear you. And, how does this thing work? Help. There's a switch in here? I don't see a switch. Okay, speak louder. I will echo it. Okay, go ahead.
The shoe in the top left,
Shoe.
and the oil lamp in the bottom right.
Shoe and the oil lamp, okay?
Okay. The tea kettle and the silhouette,
Tea kettle and silhouette. Why?
because they're both silhouettes.
Because they were both silhouette.
Oh.
Okay.
The angry man and the light.
Angry man and the light, why?
Light bulb,
Light bulb, why?
because they're both
They both.
energetic.
What else?
The mushroom and the table lamp,
Mushroom and table lamp, why?
because of the shape.
The shape, okay.
And the hat and the cup, because they're opposite shapes.
A hat and a cup because they're opposite shape. Thank you. Anyone has completely different pairing of the whole thing. Way in the back, that maroon. Can you speak up?
Yes, I have no trouble speaking up. I paired the mushroom and the gravy boat.
Why?
Because mushroom gravy.
Okay, mushroom gravy. She's saying it as such a matter of fact. It's like, what else do you think it should
The
be?
shoe and the hat. Accessories.
Why?
Accessories.
Okay, shoe and hat.
And the lamp and the light bulbs were on his
Lamp and the light bulb, okay.
and the tea kettle and the teacup.
Tea kettle and teacup.
And then I paired the angry man yelling at the man by silhouette.
Angry man with the silhouette.
The silhouette.
Okay, that's it? Okay, very good. Anyone else has got anything different? Really, really different?
The mushroom and the magic lamp.
Mushroom and the magic lamp. Why? Wait a second. Hold on.
Well, because I'm an old hippie and the magic mushroom and the genie and
Magic mushroom and the genie and he's a hippie. Okay, what else? Different.
The angry guy
Uh-huh.
and the tea kettle, because that's
Why? Angry guy and the tea kettle. Why?
because the tea kettle is making that loud sound. And it's
Tea kettle making that loud sound and he's fuming.
yeah.
The angry man is fuming and tea kettle is fuming. Okay, very good. So we're gonna stop right here because for the sake of time. So what we have here is very interesting pairing. So you see, all this crowd, you can have all kinds of ways of looking at life and all kinds of ways of drawing association and relationships in life. It doesn't mean that not everybody agrees and sees the same way as everybody else, but not everything in life is about wrong or right. It's just the way we see life. So what we're going to look at is the way we basically pair reality, the way our brain works, 3 ways. And the lady in the back, we said, well, of course, That's called functional. And the other one is by shape. This looks like that. So these are 2 actually left brain way of pairing it. But a right brain, which is very unique, and we need to be taught to do that, is a metaphoric pairing. And that is one of the ways that we learn as Baha'i children, as we become familiar with the prayers, as we keep saying, oh God, educate these children. These children are the plants of thine orchard, the roses of thy garden, the flowers of... rose and garden and flowers, and people being flowers, being roses, these are metaphoric pairing, right? So we become familiar with this whole thing, and there is no substitute when we want to go deep in the whole understanding of each other and life, and especially spiritual concepts. We have to develop a metaphoric thinking brain. So we need to fortify that with the association of the writings, okay? So we go here, so we have, oh goodness, those are, ye are the stars in the skies of God's compassion. This is from the writings. Or make my prayer a fire. How does a prayer become a fire? What does fire do? The fire burns, and then what else?
It warms.
It warms.
Energy.
It gives energy. It lights the way. So you see how metaphor for one word, you can have so many concepts and so many meanings just with one word. When Baha'u'llah says, make my prayer a fire, long obligated prayer. You could have every day of saying the prayer, you could have a new understanding of that fire. So it's your relationship with the fire that is going to really bring close up to you the whole relationship you have with the prayer. So if you've never ever seen in your life fire, and if you've never been close to it, if you've never been around the candle, if you've never seen a huge fire, if you've never attended to the big forest fire, you're going to have a very limited idea of fire. And therefore, you're going to have a very limited idea of understanding that prayer and relationship of it with yourself. So this needs to expand. Okay. So, and it says, your birds that soar upward in the firmament of knowledge. So, goodness, firmament of knowledge and your birds, that means what? What does the bird do?
Fly.
And what does it fly? Which way? Upwards, exactly. And what does the bird do when it flies really up? Way up, up, up. What does happen after it flies for a while? It starts coming down. So basically, if you understand the whole function of a bird, you know that when we feel too full of ourselves, we feel like we arrive somewhere, oh goodness, I know so much, then what happens to us? We start coming down. So we have to watch out. Never think that you've gotten high enough, because then you keep going, okay. And then finally, I love this one. There's a beautiful song by Paul Parrish. It says, you are the royal falcon on the wrist of God. Now, what is a falcon? What is a bird of prey. And what does a bird of prey do? Hunts. And what does a royal falcon do? Hunts for the king. And now, how are we royal falcon? Who do we hunt for? Who do we hunt for? Baha'u'llah. What do we hunt for him? The hearts. The hearts of those who are ready and willing and open to love him. We bring him those hearts and we put it before him and says, there it is. And that's who we are. Baha'u'llah says, you're not just the falcon that goes and catches a few mouse and mice or whatever it is. You are sitting on my wrist, and remember that. And when you think about that, how do you hold your head up?
Proudly.
Really proudly, exactly, because you know which place you're sitting. Very good. So now, this is from a very wonderful scientist that years ago really started. This was new, actually. It wasn't very many years ago, maybe 10 years ago. That George Lakoff and Mark Johnson, both of them are of Berkeley. They came out with a book on metaphors. There was no book on metaphors. Can you imagine that? Those of you who are Persian, you know Persian poetry is so full of metaphors. How many people here speak Persian? Great. How many people know Persian poetry? Okay, even great, And so you know that the Persian poetry is just absolutely rich with metaphors. Without understanding metaphors, you won't be able to appreciate it. So they wrote a book that our ordinary conceptual system, in terms of which we both think and act, is fundamentally metaphoric in nature. That's why Abdu'l-Baha uses so many metaphors. Yeah? He says, you are the royal falcons. If he wants to tell us, be proud of yourself, know who you are, don't give up yourself, don't go after little mice and stuff like that. He doesn't do that. He says, you are the royal falcon, and then you know who you are. You go figure out, read about falcons, and you get it. So, and then we have, of course, in the writings, make my prayer a fire, or the cloud of his mercy, or we are flowers of God's garden, or you are the royal fountain, all of those. So here, the whole notion is our thoughts. And those of you who have not really done any research or any work with meditation, how many people here know how to meditate and meditate regularly? Just a very few people. I would suggest that you check the research, which is fascinating research coming out of Harvard. Dr. Sarah Lazar of Harvard Medical School. She has, I teach students, Baha'i students in Iran, a psychology course. And this course is online, and the book is an e-textbook, has everything in it, thank God. Has the audio, full video, all the tests, exams, everything is in it. And one of the wonderful things about the book is that it has lectures and talks and videos from all the different #1 universities in the West, including Harvard and Princeton and Stanford and whatever. And one of the videos with Valerie and Natalie that we explored, it was about this whole notion of meditation. And what does it do for the brain? It basically changes your brain. And it is a wonderful, wonderful tool for developing better concentration for those children who are having difficulty with concentration, ADD, ADHD kids, or adults. It gives you the ability to reflect and discover, because as Abdul Baha says, our human soul has the power of discovery. That this is a unique creation that knows how to discover things on its own. And one of the friends was saying, it's very, very amazing, very interesting that it has taken from the time of Moses, almost we did not make any changes, very few discoveries, and all of a sudden comes the revelation of Baha'u'llah and the Bab's declaration. And there is telegram, and there is telegraph, and there is TV, and there is internet. My goodness, it's just no limit to all of a sudden this divine springtime has made all humanity to bloom with new knowledge. So the soul has the power of discovery. But the soul, if it becomes engaged into bitter little bickering and feeling sad about that and feeling angry about that and finding fault with this and finding fault with that, that soul does not have any power. That soul becomes just kind of strangled in the pang of its own Darth Vader. It cannot do anything. Yeah. So our thoughts, our reflection, meditation can change our brain. So the way you think, your brain changes, because basically what our brain is a whole bunch of loose wires. And anytime you think about something, a connection is made, a pathway is created. And that means next time you come across that thing, that pathway already exists, and that already is easy for you to do. And something new is going to be difficult to do. And in essence, what I'm saying is that the way we think creates certain appetites in us. Now, whether that appetite is going to be a good appetite for us or a bad one, that's a matter of our exposure. So that's why Abdul Baha advises us, don't expose your children to pornography, to violence, to all of these things. The science still is politically not wanting to be sure what to do because of the whole internet. As far as I'm concerned, one of the educators was doing a workshop for the therapists about couple therapy, and he's an expert in sex therapy. He said, no, what do you guys expect? The whole Amazon was created for pornography, so don't expect anything other than that. That's what it is, that's the device. So watching our appetites, because once we develop an appetite, putting our foot into it is easy, but taking it out is going to be very difficult. So now here we have certain emotions. Oh my goodness, years ago I used to teach, do a pilot program with school districts, and these were with children. So I had this thing for I don't know, maybe 20 years. And so what it is here, there are certain emotions on the board here. But we need to have words for our emotions. That means in order to be able to manage our emotions, we need to have words. So if a child, falls and starts crying, you're going to have to give that child a vocabulary. So, okay, it hurts, huh? Are you feeling sad that you fell and you hurt your knee? So he learns hurting, learns sad. You say, are you angry at your brother because he pushed you? So he gets the whole idea of being angry. So learns in these words, vocabularies, which the child basically now is able to manage the experience, emotional experience of his own or her own self. That is necessary for us to be able to navigate the whole field, the whole ocean of emotions that we feel. Now, when you look at these emotions, it's very interesting. There are so few, there are a lot more identified, but these emotions such as blissful, arrogant, apologetic, anxious, aggressive, exhausted, guilty, all of these, they are very mundane, they're very almost material in relation to material reality. These are the emotions. And there are a whole set of emotions which absolutely does not exist in any of the bags of the psychologist yet. And they are in our prayers. They are in the long obligatory prayer. And when you come across them, if you cannot feel them, if you cannot experience with it, if you cannot experience that feeling, that means you need to work on your own emotional intelligence and your ability to have wider range of emotions, because that is where the emotions are. It's not in here. And no therapist is going to tell you. So what you do, you go at the beginning of the spiritual assembly, right? How many of you are members of spiritual assemblies here? Okay, that's not bad. That's pretty good. So what do? You go and sit down, and I was hearing from one of the friends who serves on one of the national spiritual assemblies in the world, and said, we are having such a hard time. Our consultation is so contentious, so difficult, because people feel so strong about what they want to see, and it's so difficult. And I think that's true, because we feel very, very strongly about the faith, huh? So we were talking about what would be helpful in that respect. And one of the things that our assembly has found to be very helpful is to say one prayer to begin, and then we have 9 prayers each member of the assembly will say, in order just to get ourselves tuned. It's like you want to play in a divine orchestra. What do people do in an orchestra before they go do whatever it is that they do? They need to tune their instrument, otherwise everybody's gargling, It just sounds horrible. And that's really what we have to do. We have to tune ourselves to the conductor, divine conductor, and be able to think the way he wants us to think, and be able to create harmony, because that's what an orchestra does. If an orchestra cannot create harmony, that's not an orchestra, that's just noise. So our assembly will also think and remember and mention, after we say the opening prayer, we say we like to remember so-and-so who is sick. We like to remember so-and-so who has a test. We like to remember the house of justice. We like to remember the hands of the cause of God who are in the Apple kingdom, and there are angels, and there are the concourse, and they can help us. We connect ourselves with all these forces. And by the time we finish the 9th prayer, I can tell you, we are humbled. That's the feeling, humbled. We feel like basically nothing. We know that without his confirmation, we are nothing. We can't do anything. And that, we talk with each other with great humility, and we listen to each other, hoping for the nugget of truth come out of the mouth of the one that we think the least equipped to do it. Because that's how God works, mysteriously. Uses whoever he wishes and he wills. So we don't undermine anybody who says whatever. And that kind of rescues us. And God forbid, ever, we don't ever vote, because there's no need, because it's consensus so fast. But ever, there is a chance that there is contention, or there is a difference of opinion. We just pause and say a few more prayers. And then we put everything into perspective, and so we realize who is the boss. And then the decision becomes very, very easy to make. So now we're going to go and see, in this emotions, when you look at, you ask yourself, okay, what is submissiveness? Do you hear anybody talking about that? In the whole emotional range of feelings, submissiveness, humility. I remember once we talked with one of the friends, we were learning about the faith, we talked about nobility, and she said, what is nobility? Yeah, I know people don't know what is nobility, but we know, we have to know what is nobility. How does one feel when we are noble? Because he says, noble have I created thee. You're going to have a feeling about this thing that Baha'u'llah says, this is how I created you. So how does it feel to be noble? Where do you feel it? Is it in your throat? Is it in your belly? Is it in your shoulders? Because we have locations for feelings, right? I asked someone, he says, okay, you feel angry. Where do you feel angry? Oh, in my throat. Okay, yeah, people have different locations for different feelings. Everybody is different. So where do you feel your nobility? I'm just curious.
Shoulders.
Shoulders. Okay, you're going to ask each other, where do you feel your nobility? That's the conversation we want to have with someone that we want to get to know. You guys who are looking for wonderful mates in the future, this is the kind of conversation you want to have. Yeah, exactly. Not about what movie you like, because that's not what life is all about. Marriage is about routine. And it's about somebody who's noble, you can trust them, but somebody who's not, God forbid, So, for example, humility, desiring for the love of God, state of prayer. How does a state of prayer look like? Where do you feel that state of prayer? Where is it? Is it in your head? Is it in your heart? Is it in your feet? Where is it that you feel the state of prayer? Where do you look for it?
It's manifested in the entire being.
Okay, so you feel it in your entire being. But you have to feel it, because that's one of the conditions of starting the long obligated prayer, right? You have to feel it. And if you cannot feel it, you're like an instrument that is not tuned. Because the head of the orchestra said, you need to sound this note. And you say, I got no idea what you're talking about. And you say, oh, okay, you better check out and go somewhere else. Okay, so.
Where do we feel humility?
Well, I don't know. Where do you feel humility? Is it in your eyes? Is it in your head? Is it in your throat? In your hands? Where is it? In your whole body? But where? How do you explain it to someone? How do you pose it to your child? How do you show it to another person? Because that's what life is all about. That's what relationship is all about, right? Who wants to be in life and marriage with someone who doesn't know humility? Goodness, that's very hard. Phew, wow. Like they know everything. And that means the door is closed, don't even talk anymore. Okay, so let's see here. Now, you guys, how many of you have read this classical book called Emotional Intelligence? Okay, some of you have read it. I really would recommend all of you to read it, because this is a classic that Daniel Goleman, who is really, has done a wonderful job when he wrote this book. Daniel Goleman, Emotional Intelligence, and then followed by later on Social Intelligence. Really, both these books teach us as Baha'is a lot about how to maneuver ourselves and how to carry ourselves in order to create harmony, because that's what Baha'i tells us. We need to learn the art of creating harmony. And in order to create harmony, you really need to know your emotional self. It's not about cognition. It's not about what you're thinking, but how you choose your thinking and what kind of thoughts you choose creates your emotion. And you need to know that when I think about this person's shortcomings, I'm feeling angry, I feel closed up, I feel sad, I feel depressed, I feel like a victim, and I want to lash out, And you say, ooh, that's poison, I don't want to go there, that's hell. So let's back up. So then you have to find out, what do you do to back up? What is it that you have to do? what kind of activity? Do you go out and run? Do you go say some prayers? Do you go take a shower? Do you go watch a movie? Do you go talk to some friends? Do you go consult? How do you maneuver to rescue yourself from the bottom of that ditch that you place yourself because of the way you thought about it? Okay, so Daniel Goleman gives some about criteria about what is it that we call, in his mind, emotional intelligence. So these are some tools. So one of them is self-awareness, means I know that I'm feeling angry, or I know I'm feeling sad, I know I'm feeling frustrated, I know, and one of those people who have difficulty with anger, by the way, it is almost like a thermometer, so it has to have different degrees. So way in the bottom is frustration, maybe, or something like
Irritation.
Irritated, yeah. But then way up here is where anger happens. So if the person is aware of lower in this area where the temperature is kind of at the beginning, then you should be able to arrest it, and that's much easier to